Welcome and running it straight for another Wednesday, 28th of June, and it's great to have you listening on SENZ as well as on our YouTube channel. You can text us anytime, 8833, or if you want to leave a comment on the YouTube channel, we will get to that as well. Lots to get through between now and 3 o'clock. We are going to chat with Warriors half Luke Metcalf. It's going to be good having him on around about 2:30. He's tied up with an appointment today, and when he said an appointment, I thought maybe it's him and Dallin going for a haircut. I don't know. We'll find out at 2:30. But we're going to talk a lot about this weekend's game, or this Friday's game between the Rabbitohs at Gomea Mount Smart. Sellout game.
You got something about Dallin's hair, haven't you?
What do you mean?
You're always talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, did you see Paul Gallen sniffing it on the weekend? I feel like if that was me on the sideline. I'll ask Steph to do that on Friday. Steph's going to do sideline. I might get him to just have a sniff himself and just relay that back to the commentary box. Just help me paint a bit more of a picture, Kempy.
No, don't worry. His pictures, I've got loads of pictures.
That sounds dodgier than it is. So text us any questions that you have for Luke Metcalf. We will talk heaps about the game on Friday between the Rabbitohs and the Warriors. Kempy and I are also just going to talk through what's going on in the NRL this week. We could probably do this every Wednesday, but I feel like this Wednesday in particular, there's a lot to get through. Reese Walsh, Ben Hunt, Manly, all their signings and everything else that's going on. Over 4 hours, that judiciary last night, Kempy, for Reese Walsh.
Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. You know what I mean? And I read an article that he paid to get someone down there. It was like the O.J. Simpson case. You know, to bring someone in that was used to getting players off and made it worse. You know what it sounded like to me after reading all the transcripts? It sounded like three boys had been on detention and had on their way to see the principal had made their story up, and none of them had the story right.
No, and poor David Fafita, when he was asked for his testimony, butchered it and said he was talking to the ref, and then they're like, excuse me, he's like, Paddy. He was talking to Paddy.
There was always one guy that gets the story wrong, mate. Yeah. You know, so look, to be brutally honest, I thought he got off really light. I thought when I heard
of course he did.
I was watching the game when I heard the footage, but it was the two shot, the one with the full shot, which saw him walking towards. I think it was Fledger that put his hand out and caught him in the face. The referee caught Fledger in the face when he was trying to push him away, and he was aiming the content directly at the referee. I thought, well, there's no way you can argue with that. So,
the funny thing is, I'm not, and we were going to get into this shortly. Once I heard the Reese Walsh story, and the story was that Paddy Carrigan came up to him and said, calm your brain down, with a few expletives, calm your brain down, Reese, because if you remember the play, Colbo dances across field, goes through a hole, and Reese is flying up into the line, gets called for obstruction. Paddy Carrigan's coming, just slow your brain, Reese. You're doing a million things at once. And when he says that, Reese's thing is that he says to Paddy Carrigan, what the F do you mean, C word? And then the ref blows the whistle, and Reese runs up to the referee and says, I was talking to Paddy, I was talking to Patrick. That's what he says straight away. I actually buy that, Kempy. When you watch the footage, I actually think that makes sense. Regardless of that, though, you cannot say that anywhere near a referee when he's just made a penalty call, because you're asking for trouble, and he gets done for contrary conduct, which I think he should have. But isn't there a bigger issue here as well, that if Reese Walsh was talking to Paddy Carrigan, I think he has a problem at the moment with the way he talks to his teammates. You see when Brisbane give up tries and he runs over to his teammates and he sprays them. And this is a 20-year-old with a lot more senior guys in the team. I just think there's a bigger issue here about how Reese Walsh conducts himself on a rugby league field.
I think, the no dickheads policy.
Yeah,
I think this runs through. I think Melbourne. You got to think about Craig Bellamy. How do you think Craig Bellamy would handle this?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yep. That's the first thing. Yep. I think the second thing is you have to go back probably 8 to 10 months on the sideline at the Warriors in the last game when he was running up and down the sideline yelling up at the coach's box to Stacey to put me back on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The no dickhead policy is going
to the walkie-talkie, didn't he?
He's going to bring Brisbane down.
Yeah.
And we don't have that problem in at the Warriors at the moment. Imagine if Reese Walsh is in there at the moment doing all this sort of stuff and causing this type of panic within a team. I'll tell you right now, a suspension is going to cost a team in the top 8. You know, there's a story coming out this week. We're talking to Sean Edwards, great Wigan player, played over 400 games and for Great Britain, but has been doing coaching in rugby union, and he's dead right. After the super final on the weekend, he basically said teams that don't have players on the football field, it's going to cost them. Now that type of, whether it's talking to the referee, talking to Paddy Carrigan, and getting David Fifita's story wrong, it's not something new, and I think that if he doesn't take this as what it should be, as a warning shot across his bow to say, pull your head in, mate, I don't think he's going to reach the heights that everyone's talking about with Reese Walsh if he can't keep a lid on it.
Yeah.
You know, you just don't do that. I think you take the 3 weeks, 100%.
Yeah, he's gotten off very lightly there. So what if you're Kevy Walters or if you're some of those senior players, what are you doing with Reese Walsh?
Well, you've got to have that policy. You've got to have that policy within your club that you're part of the team. There's no one bigger than the team.
So do you think Kevy should maybe just drop him for an extra week? Just say your suspension's 3, but I'm actually going to give you a 4th from a team as a team suspension.
No, but I do think what he will do, Kevy, is that if that happens again, you can go back and you can play in Trust Cup, in Queensland Cup. You know what I mean? I think that would actually hurt more than being dropped. So you know the part that I don't like about this, Sam, is that he puts himself above everything, and on the back of what happened to Luai. So he's come out after the Luai. Tweet, and then he's portrayed holding the jersey and all this sort of stuff. The word arrogance has been used quite a lot. Well, I've got to tend to agree. No, there's
100% there's an air of arrogance about him, which rubs people up the wrong way. And he's only 20 years old. It's the way he carries on because he's a phenomenally talented player, and everyone knew this, and we knew it when he left the Warriors. You know, he was going to excel in Brisbane, but he makes it hard to get him behind him sometimes, given how he acts on the field, which sometimes is childish. Very interesting. Who plays number 1 for Queensland then? Oh,
do you listen to the media saying that Ponga is not going to be chosen?
Well, the argument is that Brimson was the 18th man and he's in the setup. So
Scotty Drinkwater's not from Queensland?
He is. He could play for Queensland as well.
Walks in.
Well, at the moment, I think he's one of the informed players. I mean, for me, I'd say Ponga because of the experience. He's played Origin before.
I can't see how they would leave Ponga out. But you know, if they've written him off for the whole series because he's asked to be left out for the whole series, I think Billy Slater's that type of bloke who say, okay, well we won't even explore that
I think
part.
so. Yeah, I think so. So maybe Brimson, you know that, and it's game 3 and they've already won. So maybe it's just a matter of.
Drinkwater's been on fire. If you're picking if you stick with Billy's policy and you're picking players who are playing in the form, you know, you have a look how well Fido's gone, the hammer.
Yep.
Since he's been in there, he's arguably been their best player across the 2 games. Mate, you got to say that Drinkwater over the past month has been the form player of the fullback in the Queensland competition.
Now Drinkwater, I've just been looking up actually as a New South Wales boys.
There you go. Well, he ain't
played for Terrigal Sharks.
Yep, down the Central Coast.
Yeah, so he's out for Queensland. But, you know, hey, New South Wales might be looking for a number 1 as well. Let's move on. You got to text us at 8833 or drop a comment in the YouTube stream. I see you all in there as well, so welcome in. And here's something for you. Sold out game on Friday night against the Rabbitohs. Everyone's wanting tickets. No one can get them, Kempy. It is the hottest ticket in town. We got 4 tickets to give away.
How good.
All you got to do is ring 0800 37 Go Warriors. This is our Warriors voicemail. Just leave a voicemail telling us why you're the number 1 fan. It could be 10 seconds. It could be a minute, right? Not only will you go into the draw to win that big trip over to Aussie and all the freebies that go with it, phones, etc., you'll also go into the draw this afternoon to win 4 tickets to Friday's game. And you've only got 40 minutes to do it. So the pool won't be as big as you might think. 0800 37 Go Warriors. Text story coming in here on 8833. Let's quickly talk about the Ben Hunt situation. So, asked for a release from the Dragons. We all know that, well publicised. The Dragons have come out and said, nah, you got to stick it through to the end of 2023. Creates a whole interesting dynamic because part of you says, great, a club sticking up for a contract, telling him to put your money where your mouth is. But then on the other hand, you now have a senior player in your club who doesn't want to be there and you're asking him to play another 10 games. So a very awkward situation for the Dragons and for Ben Hunt.
Well, a very awkward situation for the NRL. You know, so the NRL basically got pander to players again, where players are signing contracts. Clubs are trying to sign players on these contracts, and then all of a sudden with 10 games to go, they can say, well, I want out. And I want the NRL to let me go out. I'm pleading to the NRL to make this happen. The salary cap issue, does he go because of the salary cap issue? Well, the salary cap needs to be looked at. How can someone like Brisbane, and this is what I can't work out, how can someone like Brisbane afford Ben Hunt? Ben Hunt is St George's marquee player.
Yep, he's $1 million.
And pro rata it or whatever you want to do, but how can you afford Ben Hunt? And then he says he doesn't want to play hooker, he wants to play halfback, but he wants to play hooker for Queensland.
Yeah,
and he's not going to end up at halfback at the Brisbane Broncos.
Yeah, it's silly.
So there's so many negatives in and around the story regarding Ben Hunt. For me, if I, and I've put my boots on in St George, my shoes in St George's shoes, I'd be just saying no. Honour your contract. You're signed here to play for us, you play for us. If he doesn't want to play, you play second grade.
But do you not think it's going to affect them on the field?
It don't affect him on the field if he's playing second grade. And the players, for instance, they again, you're talking about building culture. What they need at the moment, that club doesn't need a pander to Ben Hunt.
Yeah, that's true.
And this is where it gets my back up, is when players and people think that they're bigger than the club or they're bigger than the game.
Yeah.
Mate, Ben Hunt, he's 33, he's on the twilight of his career. Yes, he's a very good Origin player. He's carrying on as if he's the best player in the world and needs to move, and he's asking the NRL to do it. And if I was St George, saying you honour your contract. You know what I mean? We paid you. We're the ones that took a punt on you. We're the ones that give you what you wanted. Now you deliver for us. And if the NRL go back on St George, where does that leave the rest of the clubs? Because that's what I would be saying as a CEO. What happens to us when let's say Reese Walsh he blows up next time and he does get thrown into second grade?
Yeah. And
he says, I want out.
So I know you've, I think you're a big fan of open, salary, right? Like letting everyone know what everyone gets paid. You're a fan of that?
100%.
Yeah, so am I, because I feel not only does it add an extra element to the fans, right? And I always compare it to NFL, NBA, NHL in America, where all the salaries are public. You can see how much cap a team has left to spend. It creates a whole nother discussion around, okay, if we get rid of him, we've got enough for that guy, and we could get that person, this person's off, we could sign him for this much. Whole different conversation around the sport, right? But not only that, you're also allowing the fans to be able to, I don't know, it's more transparency in the sport, isn't it? Knowing how much these players are on so that you're not left suspicious and spreading rumour about, the Roosters and the sombrero. You know what I mean? I don't know. I've always been a big fan of making those salaries public.
I'll tell you one thing it does overnight is it shifts the power from the managers who basically run the game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So already you've got talk about, coach. So for instance, a coach who's signed to a manager along with a stable of players, and we saw that with Kearney and Moses here at the Warriors, under Anna Sullivan. They all come in, they bring the whole stable over. Transparency cuts all that out. And you see the thing with conversation with a player manager can simply go like this, all right? And you can go, this club wants you, that club doesn't want you. How do you know? You know what I mean? So I'm not just talking about make it transparent when you sign, make all the offers transparent. So when you're watching the NFL and the NBA, and they say, well, here's Minnesota, they're coming in for this player, and they made an offer for 10 years with a guaranteed payout and a buyout at the back end of it.
Yeah.
Now, you can't argue with that. So players are going, well, it's right there in front of me. My manager's got that. He's told me exactly what that is. Now let's see what the market is. At the moment, what you've got is you've got a bunch of player managers that are manipulating the NRL so that they can move players around. And if you really think about it, they actually own the competition. So they can move Ben Hunt to wherever they want, or they can move Reese Walsh to wherever they want, because Reese Walsh doesn't know who's offering what, and no one knows what the offers are. It's an issue.
100%. Well, speaking of player movements and signings, and I'm conscious we do have to move on quickly, and we do want to talk about Warriors Rabbitohs this Friday. Lots of texts coming in as well on 8833. Just quickly, Luke Brooks to Manly, which got announced earlier this week. It is a 3-year, 4-year? 3-year, isn't it?
3 years there, along with Talal. That's Willie Talal's son.
Who I personally think has been having a terrible season
Jackson
in 2023.
Paulo from
he's going from the Roosters.
That was a real surprise for me, because I thought he's been going all right in a very poor Sydney City side.
So Luke Brooks, just quickly, because we do have to take a break, just quickly, Luke Brooks to Manly. How do you value Luke Brooks? Because personally, I don't think he's done anything in the NRL, but the argument is that he's in a very, very poor team. He's one of the most criticised players in the NRL. Does playing alongside DCE turn Luke Brooks into the superstar that some people think he is?
Well, at 5'8"?
Yeah.
No, well, I don't think he's a 5'8".
Okay.
You know what I mean? I think he's an out and out 7. I think if they bought Manly, I think there's a couple of things that you need to sort of consider here. One is where's Daly Cherry Evans going? All right, and he is at the twilight part of the year. This is probably his last Origin series. Mm-hmm. And the second thing is, what did the Tigers actually say to Luke Brooks? Because I think Luke Brooks was pushed.
Okay, maybe.
Well, it doesn't make sense that
who have they got to back it? Well, then why would you get rid of him?
Yes, but they might have needed the salary cap to get someone. So
he is on $1 million, which does baffle me.
Well, mate.
And he's on a decent
again, we'll go back to the conversation. Ben Hunt asked for a release. Do you think that there's another halfback who's just been offered probably twice as what he's on to wait to ask for the release so he can go to Tigers?
Yeah, I see. And that's the thing. It's all behind closed doors, which makes... I mean, transparency, and that's go back to the American sports, because the transparency in those sports is what generates so much conversation. I said to Steph today, Kempy, most of the conversations we have on air about the NRL isn't about what's going on the field. It's all the stuff out of it, which what makes the NRL such a good product. It could go to another level if we just opened up a little bit of that door to like you said, contracts.
There's so much more conversation, Sam. There's more TV programs around it. There's more media around it. There's more opportunities to promote your players, to bring them in. You know, you've got combines, camps. You know, they're talking about all sorts of avenues where they can especially in this digital age, create more content. Look, I don't think it's too far away. Seriously, I don't think it's too far away. I think eventually, and I've always been the way. Like, I don't begrudge anyone getting what they got when they were playing. I've always been the way. Well, why didn't players know what I was getting? Because some players would tell me what they were on, and I'm saying, man, who's your manager?
Yeah.
Like, seriously, don't you know your value?
Just quickly, a message here from James on the YouTube stream says, leave drink water out of your mouth, Kempy. He's in my fantasy team and playing very well.
Is that from Mark? Did that come from
Mark? That's from
Mark?
James, who wants him in his fantasy team. We've got to take a short break. Lots of texts coming in here and lots of messages on the YouTube stream, which we will get to. Just a reminder, Luke Metcalf coming up at around about 2:30. Lots of questions coming in for him as well. But we'll take a short break, come back, and we'll have a little look at Friday night Rabbitohs v Warriors at Mount Smart. Stay with us. We're running it straight 25 minutes past 2. A big shout out to South Seas Healthcare, Auckland's largest Pacific Wellbeing Service provider. Don't forget, 4 tickets to give away for this Friday's game, sold out at Mount Smart. Warriors Rabbitohs, just got to call 0800 37 GO. Warriors, leave a voicemail. You're straight into the draw. So many questions and comments, both on YouTube and on 8833. We will talk Rabbitohs Warriors. That is going to come. One quick question that came in here. Lads, does the Warriors' best right side defence effort nullify South's best left side attacking effort? And that's an interesting one, Kempy, because you've got Kolomatangi going up against probably Josh Curran now that Maratani Akora is in there. And I would say defensively, Josh, that's probably the weakest part of Josh Curran's game. So that's going to be a big battle on Friday night.
Yeah, it is. I don't think he starts, to be honest. I think Josh Curran goes to the bench and they start with Mitch Barnett out there on the right edge and then move him to the middle when Josh Curran comes on. I'm picking because of that frailty. Look, I just think at the moment that they're relying too much on their offence, South Sydney, as they did last year in stages. And what's happening is they're being found out themselves defensively, and they need to shift their mentality back to that defensive strength that they can show every now and then. But if you look at their score...
I think they've averaged 28 over the last 5 games.
30 to 40 points over the last 5 games that they've leaked in.
Yeah.
It's okay scoring 30 to 40 points yourself, but you can't do that every week.
No, I totally agree. The defence is what's really fallen off a cliff for South Sydney. Let's rip through a couple of these text questions and on YouTube. Broncos will be happy they only missed Walsh for 2 games. He caused the offence at club level. He should serve his 3 weeks for the Broncos. They're saying not include Origin in that one.
That's not right. Because look, you have to punish him across the board because for the sake of the Broncos, he needs to see and hurt. Because of the action that he had. I just think this has been building for over a year.
Steve says, hi Kimby and Sam, the Rabbits have Walker Murray Cook coming back from State of Origin 2. Also, Cartwright is available. The Rabbits have won 13 of the last 14 against the Warriors. Are you really sure they're going to win? We'll get into that very shortly.
13 plus.
Steve. And Sam says, boys, if we beat the Rabbitohs this Friday, we should have our eyes on top 2, not just top 4 after the Rabbits. We've got 8 games left, only 3 against top 4 teams who are all below us with 2 of those at home. July is a season-defining month, and I think if we come away with 3 wins from 4, top 2 should be our target with an easy with how easy our last 5 games are and hopefully getting a full strength team. Table's a bit skewed as teams still have buys, etc. Imagine a qualifying final at Mount Smart. I would say that this here on Friday night is going to answer a lot of questions, Kempe, around the Warriors. Are they a top 4 side? Are they a premiership contender? I think you get a win on Friday night, it goes a long way to answering the questions. If you lose, I think it also answers a lot of questions.
Well,
so
what's happening at the moment is that everyone's jumping on the bandwagon, and the white noise is starting to really come out. You know what I mean? So now we're going top 4, maybe possibly top 2. Now they've got an easy run home, blah, 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 blah. There is no easy run home. There is no guarantee to be a top 4, top 2. And to make the top 8 and get in the finals was probably a really good target for Webby this year. Now, they have got an opportunity because they've got through those periods. I think the next month, not this game, we're going to see whether or not they'll actually end up inside that top 4. Because, yes, they have got a favourable run home, a number of games at home and against teams that are below them. So I don't think we count all of our pennies yet about going to the finals in the top 2.
Yep.
I just think you look at the next month, because this is, they got some pretty good teams to play home and away, and of course their last bye. And they want. I agree with the texter, and you want to have at least 3 of those wins under your belt.
I don't have a doubt that schedule-wise, the Warriors can find themselves in the top 4, just given who they're going to come up against. But it's a different conversation asking whether they are a top 4 team based on talent and skill and roster, etc.
They're a top 4 team right now, but this time of the year doesn't count.
Well, but see, yeah, because I would argue that the Cowboys playing the way they are a top 4 team.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
But it doesn't matter. Like the top 4 teams, when they play, if you have a look at the competition, there's 8 points that separate the top 13 teams. You could win one week, you're in the 8. You lose the next week, you're back down the bottom of 12 and 13.
Yeah, and the text was right in the fact that we've got all this skewing with the extra buys, etc. So yeah, that is playing into it. Just a couple of quick ones here. Rory says, "What a Manly smoking! 600k a season is even worth that? I don't reckon." That's on Luke Brooks. Chris says, "My wife loved Walsh and felt sorry for him in State of Origin Game 1 with New South Wales targeting him. Not anymore. Thinks he's a dickhead." Cheers, Chris. And Steve says,
"There's the policy.
Sam, it's all gone to Walsh's head. Thinks he's a gun. Sookie." Cheers from Steve. Just quickly on the YouTube, there's lots coming in here as well, particularly on the Drinkwater conversation and whether or not he should be featuring in Origin. And then Waz Up TV, great podcast channel there, says, "Agreed, too much power by the player agents. NRL is getting closer to a year-round content machine. The off-season is still quite dead, apart from player-type scandal. But something like that might change should the salaries, etc., be open." We've also got a lot of texts coming in for Luke Metcalf, who's going to join us after news, sport and weather. A lot around whether or not he's the fastest in the team and what his 100-metre time is. So we'll think about a way to put that to Luke Metcalf. If you want to ask a question, you can keep those coming in. 8833, drop a comment in the YouTube. We'll take a short break for news, sport and weather. When we come back, we will talk to the Warriors half. Welcome back into Running It Straight here on SENZ. Big thanks to South Seas Healthcare, Auckland's largest Pacific wellbeing service provider. We're just trying to get to Luke Metcalf now. I did say he was in an appointment, so we'll get to him as soon as we can. And in the meantime, we'll keep going through all your questions and comments. Dom on YouTube says, "Reckon the Cowboys are still in the picture. Jacko still in the picture and going to come home strong. Super glad we played them early." Now, that's a big one. Playing them early was a big one for us because, they're far too much talent on that roster, Kempe, and they're all starting to click into gear now. They are the team I would be the most scared about outside the top 8.
Well, 20 points still to come through the coffers, aren't there, with 10 games to go leading into the back end of the season, and they haven't had a change to their roster at all. If they can, get let's say 3 or 4 wins together, I think they're a serious threat. Todd Payton and the Cowboys, they've looked good over the last couple of weeks, the way that they've won the game. They've won a tight one. They've won, the one last week against South quite easily. But we always knew that they were going to, I guess, hit the ground at some stage with a hiss and a roar, and it looks like through this mid part of the year, on the back of Origin, they're going to do that.
I love this this question here on Facebook for Luke Metcalf. Is he legally changing his name to Luka Mikiafu, and is he going to play for Samoa? Must be a big Samoa.
I think he's got some Samoan in him.
Well, here's a question while we're trying to get him up, Kempe. To Mighty Martin when he comes back in. If Luke Metcalf keeps playing the way he is, what do you reckon?
I'd chuck T on the bench. 100%. Look, you wouldn't move them at the moment. They're playing pretty good football. 4 out of 5, the Warriors going into the hardest part of the month. You might look at it in 3 weeks' time if they're not travelling too well, the Warriors, before they go into the bye. But I think if they get through this next month and they've won, 3 of those games, I dare say that Tamati will probably spend some time on the bench. We're filling that Luke Egan area of replacing the hooker and taking over Bailey Surinen's role.
And speaking of the bench, Dan from Warriors Anonymous, with the potential to have all players back for selection, hopefully, towards the later stage of the season. What is the bench?
Well, if they've got a full side, I think that at the moment, what you look at with Walker Tavaga covering the middle,
yes.
I think Tamari Martin is a really good player in there because he can play anywhere in the back line as well. So he covers centre, fullback, 5'8", and also hooker. All right, so
okay.
you look at what happens.
Because the problem with that is, if it's almost like that Nico Hines State of Origin situation, if there's no injuries, you're burning a spot on the bench.
No, you're not, because Egan can't play 80 minutes. You don't want a hooker out there playing 80 minutes.
Okay.
So
is he okay?
You're using that as an interchange spot for Egan to get a bit of a rest on the bench before he needs to go back on, and then you carry another big middle player
like a Tom Ali or.
I think Tom Ali's been pretty good this year. I actually think Bunty Orfor's been pretty good when he's covering those spots. So
a fully fit will have Barnett and Adam Fanua-Blake starting props, so there is space for Bunty on the bench.
Yeah, you just put one of those on there, but I think you have Jez Tavaga, and you saw how good they were when they started the year off, and you've got to have Tamari Martin in that side as well. So, mate, it looks very strong, and if we can get them back at that, that's what I'm saying, get through this month, get them back at the right time of the year towards the end, when we're pushing into those top fours, getting them ready for the semis. Look out. They're definite.
Another text in here that says, what's the point of getting 2 points for a bye? If everyone got 0, the leaderboard would be more accurate throughout the season. And I totally agree with that. I've never understood why the NRL has to do that, Kempy. I believe it's to do with making sure that if a team has a terrible, terrible season and only wins one game, it's still, it's easier for a fantasy board team that's got 8 points than 2 points, or no points if they didn't win a game. But I feel like it's a waste of time. It just skews the ladder, makes it confusing, and if everyone's getting it anyway, it all cancels out. So what's the point?
I don't believe that team should play extra time either. I think if you finish the game after 80 minutes and you share the points, you share a point each.
Well, I think you can share a point and get an extra point if you win.
Well, I think
an extra time.
Yeah, and I think that's where rugby's sort of been a bit more innovative in and around the way that they use their point system, is that you can create a different point system as opposed to giving teams something for nothing.
Yeah.
And make it a little bit more exciting that way. So, look, we can't get away with the buys in the buy situation. We've grown a buy this year because of the extra team that's coming to the competition. But you basically start the season, everybody, on 6 points.
Yeah. We've got to take a break because we'll try to get Luke Metcalf in the break and see if we can get him on. There are questions here for him. Just before we do get to the break, though, thought this was pretty funny this morning. Ian Foster, the All Blacks coach, facing media out at Mount Smart, funnily enough, while the Warriors training was on, Kempy, and supposedly the players were a little bit distracted.
No, we just arrived and probably getting kicked off shortly. So, yeah. But I think some of the boys are pretty keen to go and try and watch them on Friday, but can't get tickets. So if there's anyone out there's a few All Blacks are keen. Thank you.
There you go, All Blacks keen to watch the Warriors on Friday night.
Let's drop it online and tell them to get on that
Oh, yeah, 0800 377 Go Warriors, Fozzie.
And 4 tickets,
I even heard out at the media session, Kempy, that some of the All Blacks boys were seen watching the Warriors training, just maybe a little bit of awe, maybe a little bit of interest in making a code switch. Look, that's rumour and speculation.
No doubt that a number of those boys too could switch over to the Warriors quite easily and play. I'd love to see Rico Oane in a Warriors jersey.
Love to see Damian McKenzie play rugby league, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, well,
fullback, little darty fullback like a Ryan Pappenhausen.
I don't think he'd be as exciting as what you probably thought.
I think he'd be like a Pappenhausen.
Caleb Clark would be good.
Yeah, I always thought Richie Mo'unga would be a good league player with the kicking as well.
Akira, if he was thinking about changing, he'd look good in a Warriors jersey. And Shooter,
Scotty Stevenson. That's a conversation for another day. We're going to take a break, and hopefully when we come back, we have Luke Metcalf on the other side. Welcome back into Running It Straight. Really struggling to get through to Luke Metcalf. So unfortunately, got to really apologise for that because I know people were looking forward to hearing from him. We were certainly looking forward to chatting to him, but he's just not picking up the phone. So not much more we can do, unfortunately. maybe we'll try him again next Wednesday for running it straight. And we'll take all your questions. I've got them all saved here, and we can put those to him next Wednesday. So, look, apologise that we weren't able to make it happen, but hopefully next Wednesday. And it does give us more time to have a little bit of a chat about this weekend's game, which we haven't really got into. So let's have a look, Kempy. This Friday night, 8 o'clock kickoff. We will be on air, SENZ from 7, live commentary, of course. Sellout game at Go Media Mount Smart Stadium, and a chance for the Warriors to jump into the top 4. That's what they're looking at this weekend if they can get the W and get a few more points with that points differential. Team that Andrew Webster named pretty much unchanged from the last few weeks, apart from that Maratini Akore suspension, which is forced to change there. So just running through it quickly, Charles Nichol-Klugstar is going to start in the fullback jersey, Dallin Martinez-Elise in the arc, and Marcelo Montoya on the wings, Rocco Berry, Adam Pompey in the centres, then Metcalf and Johnson in the halves. Fanua Blake, Bunty Afoa, the two props, Wade Egan, the hooker, Jackson Ford, Josh Curran comes in for Maratini Akore in the starting role, and Tohu Harrison 13. On the interchange, Dylan Walker, Mitch Barnett, Bailey Siren and Tom Ale. So no Maratini Akore, Kempi, but Mitch Barnett comes back into the team.
Yeah, big loss, especially out there on that right edge there alongside Sean Johnson. I think that's where he's getting a lot of his confidence this year. And just answer Shannon in his text around whether or not he's a shout for the Dally M. Yes, I think he is. I think Sean, if he continues to play this type of football through the last 10 rounds, I think he's in with a big shoe in for that gong. But I think that's why Mitch Barnett probably will start next to Sean, just to continue with that confidence boost that he has, especially defensively on that left edge of South Sydney, that'll be coming at him at 100 miles an hour. So apart from that, get a little bit of consistency with the team going forward. I think there's lots to be talked about and has been talking about. Dallin's on his form of his career, but you can say that about most of the team, Sam. I think a lot of them couldn't be playing a hell of a lot better. I thought that a big difference in the game last week was when Dylan Walker came on. I thought they were flat against St George leading up to that point. Dylan Walker came on. He picked up the speed of line. He kept going really hard at the line offensively with some passes. He tried a little kick through the line, got the ball back, and on the back of a lot of things that he tried, some good stuff happened, as well as chasing that bomb and getting that ball back to Jackson Ford to score under the post. So, it's a big ask against the South Sydney side this week, but I think a South Sydney side that's struggling 4 from 5 they've lost. They come over here, it's a full house. I think everything's in the Warriors' favour, and they're going to be pretty hard to turn over.
So looking at the Rabbitohs team, Blake Taff in the number 1 jersey, obviously no Latrell Mitchell, he's still out. Alex Johnson and Richard Kenner on the wings, Isaiah Tass, Campbell Graham in the centres, Cody Walker, Lachlan Ilias, the two halves, then Totola and Saleh, the two props with Damien Cook in the hooking role, and then Kolomatangi, Chikam in the second row, Cameron Murray, the 13. Where it's interesting for me, Kempi, is the bench for South. So Saliva of Havili and Shakai Mitchell, Davey Moale and Thomas Burgess. So 3 big boppers on the bench in Mitchell, Moale, Burgess, and then Havili playing what you would call sort of a utility role, backup hooker. But to me, that screams Jason Demetrio knows it's going to be a forward battle and knows his forwards are going to get tired, which I actually think bodes really well for the Warriors, because when you look at their bench of Walker and Sirinen and Barnett, there's energy and there's pace as opposed to just replacing a big guy with a big guy.
Well, that's one of the, I guess, positives that the Warriors forward pack have shown throughout the year, is that they're arguably one of the best forward packs in the competition. Like when you're trying to defend them, they're big guys with mobile feet that shift really close to the line and always bending that line, and then you add the little passing game that they've got, and they've sliced them up to the middle, and then you bring their bench on with the likes of Dylan Walker and co that run really good lines and bring that passing game back into against a tired big forward pack that's trying to defend against them. They're really hard to defend against. So, mate, Saliva Havili, the boy from Auckland here, he's also playing a lot of his football in the middle. They basically picked 4 big middle blokes on the bench, which is really surprising. You do get Cam Murray back along with Damien Cook in that side and in that forward pack. That's going to give them a little bit more starch through that middle of the park. But mate, I can't see them stopping that forward pack and stopping that momentum that Sean Johnson's really loving this year. And on the back of it, with Sean's kicking game, because you've got to say, arguably, Sean's kicking game has been the best in the comp
Well, he's the most kick meters by a country mile.
Yeah.
Chad Townsend.
And he's sort of found his mojo with the kicks too. So he's not pulling, 50-50 kicks like you don't know what you're getting type kick.
Yeah.
He's actually pulling out 80-85% of the time the right kick, and they're starting to enjoy it, the Warrior boys that are chasing, and that's a big part of the kicking game. If you can get that part right, then you're always a threat with your kicking game.
Big test for Rocco Berry, Adam Pompey in the centres going up against Isaiah Tass, Campbell Graham, because I think outside of Katoni Staggs and Herbie Farmworth, that's the other best centre pairing in the competition at the moment, Tass and Campbell Graham. So a real big test for Berry and Pompey, who have probably had it a bit easy, I'd say, over the last 3 or 4 games. They've come up against centre pairings that aren't quite established or aren't as lethal. But I personally think Campbell Graham is the best centre in the comp this year.
Yeah, look, I think Adam Pompey, I don't think people have given him the recognition that he deserves this year. He's thrown a couple of loose passes. He probably just needs to get that out of his game, but he's very potent offensively. I actually think the game's going to be won in and around that spine area. I think Ilias with Walker up against Metcalf and Johnson is a big battle on the back of 2 big forward packs. But if you have a look also, Alex Johnson out the back with Blake Taff. I don't know whether Alex Johnson goes to the back if he struggles, young Taffy at the back, but Chance Nickel-Coxted, he's been arguably one of the best all year for the Warriors, the way that he's been playing. So if we can get that part of it right this weekend, I think on the back of our forward pack, who have been absolutely outstanding, they've just got too much, I think, in their tank for them.
A text that just came in from Jared quickly, just as you were talking about Chance Nickel-Klukstad, he said, boys, I would not, in capitals, if the option came up, trade Chance Nickel-Klukstad for Reese Walsh. No way. As good as Walsh is, Chance fits in perfectly with what our club culture needs. Looking at what's going on with recent moment, I'm always glad to see the back of the likes of him and Matt Lodge, which is funny because I get into Twitter arguments a lot, Kempy, with guys who come at me for saying that Chance isn't a premiership winning fullback and someone like Reese Walsh is because he can break a game open. And I've always gone back to the fact that it's more important than that. It's about culture. It's about work ethic. It's what Chance gives us out of our back end and those yardage sets to allow the rest of the team to flourish. Sure, Reese Walsh is good for a break open play and he can pull teams apart on attack, but how many times does he go missing on defence and he out of position, misses a kick through? And now how we can see how often he costs his teammates.
I think that's the big point. I doubt whether you get much argument from any people at the moment, and just in and around the type of blokes they are. They're 2 different types of people, and the energy that comes out at the Warriors at the moment, because they're so tight, you can throw a player like a Reese Walsh back into that mix, and it's that rotten apple, and just makes that the rest of that whole environment rotten. You know what I mean? And you don't want that to happen. No. So there is a place, and I've played with plenty of guys where they come in and they're not your cup of tea, but you throw them a football and they're the type of guy that you want to play with. Yeah. But they generally are the types of blokes that walk away from you during the week and they behave badly in the back, not in the front. So what he's doing is he's out in the front of the car doing the dance and spotlights. Now, that's the part he needs to remove. If he wants to act like a pork chop, he wants to do it behind closed doors where no one else can see it except himself, and putting himself out there in front like a possum in headlights. Mate, it's just not a good look. He's a lucky boy this week to only get those 3 weeks, and I tend to agree. Now, Clock said for me, I'd have he's him along with Jackson Ford and Sean Johnson this year be fighting it out for players player. That says a lot about the way that they've gone this year.
Any of them can be, even Nia Corder, like he's got to be up there.
Nia Corder would be right in the front, but he spent a fair bit of time on the sideline. And again, I reckon that there we've got to be really careful, because now he's really loaded towards the back end of the year with his penalties. If we lose him, given the fact that Sean Johnson loves having him next to him, it can cost us. So we've got to be really careful.
You've got 20 seconds here, Kempy, just to respond to Waz Up TV, and he does some great analysis of the Warriors games, who says that the South's pack is a Canberra-type pack. We'll throw a big punch early, but we can work them in the second half. Do you think that's sort of how it's going to go on Friday night? But the tight first half, maybe opening up in the second?
Oh, look, I think the way that they played against Canberra shows you the amount of work that they put into them in the off-season. Aiden Whanua-Blake is a lot lighter, and even when he's playing at 80%, he's causing them lots of havoc. So I think they run over. One of the reasons why they're the best pack in the competition, or one of them, is because they run over the top of packs later on because of their fitness. All
right, I'm going to get your prediction after the break. Kempy, announce our ticket winners as well for Friday night. So stay with us here on Running It Straight, thanks to South Seas Healthcare, Auckland's largest Pacific wellbeing service provider. Coming up to 3 o'clock here on Running It Straight, the run home not too far away. Big shout out to Kim, I think it's Kim, who rang the Warriors voicemail today, and you've won yourself 4 tickets, Kim, to this Friday's game. Sold out, and you've got 4 tickets.
Well done, Kim.
Apparently bought a Warriors shirt, wore it to work and got a lot of sticks, so you deserve to be heading to the game on Friday night. You loyal fan, you, Kim. Once again, I want to apologise to everyone for not being able to get in touch with Luke Metcalf today. Really was looking forward to having him on.
Maybe we'll talk to their media manager and see what went on, eh?
Yeah, we'll have a chat, and we might get him on next week.
Why are they called media managers? Because they manage the media, don't they? And they're meant to give us these type of guys. So maybe we'll talk to him.
What's your prediction Friday night, Kempy?
13 plus, the Warriors.
Give me a scoreline.
Okay, well, I think they'll score 30 points.
Okay, I think it's going to be tight. It's going to be a little bit of rain about on Friday as well. So I'm going to go 20-16. There you go.
Okay.
Didn't you think it was going to be close on Friday against the Dragons? I think you did.
No, I said because they'd been down there once before and only beat them by less than 12, I took that.
Okay. Running It Straight. That's it for another Wednesday. I'll try and rein Kempy in.
You're not giving a dig, eh?
Live commentary on Friday.